For those of you who are joining us, my name is Mitra Salasel, and I'm the Director of Communications at Ideas 42. And on behalf of all of us on the team, thank you for tuning in to learn more about applying behavioral science to tough social problems. Today, as you can see, and I'm sure you're all aware, we're joined by one of our esteemed academic affiliates, Allison M. Buttenheim. She is both a professor and the Associate Director of the Center for Health Incentives and Behavioral Economics at the University of Pennsylvania. And please excuse me, I am stuck in full screen mode and have lost my notes. Okay, sorry about that. So at the University of Pennsylvania, Allison's work seeks to understand how people make decisions about their health and focuses her research on the use of behavioral economics to increase the uptake of evidence-based care. I'm also excited to mention that she's also collaborated directly with Ideas 42 on many occasions, including family planning and reproductive health projects in Senegal and Uganda. And most recently, she's been working with us to design COVID-19 tip sheets aimed at improving government communications and response in low and moderate income countries. Today, as you can see from the screen in front of you, she'll be giving us a look at some of her work conducting rapid behavioral trials to improve HIV testing in South Africa through 2 case studies in intervention design. And before I hand it off directly, just like a small housekeeping matter, this might be a refresher for some of you, but in case you're new to the Ideas 42 Academy seminar series, we'll be taking questions through the Zoom Q&A box at the end of the presentation. So throughout the presentation, feel free to drop your questions directly into the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen as you have them, and we'll answer them all live at once, and I will share them with Allison and she can respond directly. Again, you can find the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And if you have any logistical questions along the way, feel free to drop them into the chat. If there are any issues, we'll let you know. And all right, without further ado, I will hand it over and we can get started.
Great. Thank you so much. This is a really neat opportunity. I still feel like we're getting used to doing these kind of events remotely. Would have loved to have been in New York or DC with you all, but I will also say that I'm taking advantage of Dana's invitation to make this pretty informal and works in progressy. So really open this. I really hope this can be, even with the web format, interactive, and really welcome your ideas. Really focusing on the intervention design process for rapid trials. This is something we're keen to figure out and would love input from this crew. So let me frame my talk today by introducing you to Indlela, which is a new unit in South Africa that's hosted at HERO. Our tagline is Behavioral Insights for Better Health, and our goal is to build capacity to design and test nudges and other behavioral solutions to improve the effectiveness of health services and achieve better health outcomes in South Africa. Indlela is a Gates Foundation funded initiative and a partnership between Penn and CHIBE, our Center for Health Incentives and Behavioral Economics, and HERO. And it is, we think, who knows, tell us if we're wrong, the first of its kind nudge unit in terms of being disease specific. So Indlela is very much launched as an HIV focused unit, although the goal and sort of sustainability plan is to potentially expand that to other disease areas. And we are funded for 3 years by Gates and definitely have sustainability kind of built in to our goals there. Indlela is a Zulu word meaning the path or the way. And we like sort of thinking about conceptualizing behavioral insights, behavioral science as one path to improved outcomes in this really important health area. Our team, multidisciplinary and multi-country. Jackie, Sophie, Caroline, and Lungi are at the HERO offices in Johannesburg. Brendan Von Braun's an economist at UCT, University of Cape Town. I think he's done some work with the Ideas 42 team there. Lawrence Long is South African, but at Boston University, longtime collaborator with Hero. And the Penn team is myself, Harsha Jayamurthy, an economist, and Laura Schmucker, our project director. And the shape that Indlela was going to take, COVID-19 has disrupted everything, was sort of twofold. So some kind of didactic capacity building work. There's big demand everywhere, right, for behavioral science, but particularly among the HIV service provider community in South Africa and among researchers. So we had sort of a workshop capacity building arm. We do have that. And then advancing that even further by collaborating on what we call behavioral insights tests, BITs, sort of rapid trials of intervention ideas that emerge from our collaborations with researchers and with implementers in country, and some resources in the Indlela grant to do that. So, you would come to our workshop, learn all about BE and about our design process, co-design with us a really neat intervention idea, and get some resources and support from us to rapidly trial that in a practice setting. We also plan to just do sort of light touch consultation if a group has a neat idea and just the design needs some tweaks. So really flexible in the kinds of support we can offer people. But a big emphasis, and I highlighted it in red there, on rapid trials. This is not something where we hope to design a trial that's going to take 6 months or a year. We imagine really quick, in sort of days or weeks, getting signals about the effectiveness of interventions. So for us as researchers in the behavioral science space and in thinking about how Indlela was going to work, really trying to think carefully about where intervention designs would come from. And to do that work, just trying to sort of query ourselves how we usually do that in behavioral science. Where do ideas come from? And often the experience is like we just sort of sit around and come up with these ideas. Maybe we're experts in lottery incentives, or we're experts in commitment devices, and we sort of see an opportunity in a practice setting to give it a try, and we sort of say like, yeah, this is how a commitment device would work in this setting, and hopefully in collaboration with partners, we just kind of make it up, frankly, right? Sometimes we show up with a solution, either we as the scientists or sometimes our practice partners and implementers, have an idea. They kind of lead with like, here's a cool intervention I want to try, maybe even before identifying a specific problem. This, we think of as this is sort of the everything, when you've got all of you got is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And we have some really good hammer wielders, right, in our space. People who've really perfected a type of intervention. And that's great because sometimes what we have are nails, right? Although sometimes what we have are screws, and sometimes what we have are like cinnamon buns or something, and the hammer isn't going to work so well. But I do think this is sort of an under-discussed, maybe under-problematized approach to the behavioral science interventions that we do. The secret is out. Sometimes we just show up with a hammer. But ideally, and often I know in Ideas 42 work and often in Chibe's work, we have this beautiful structured process that has a really nice picture and process, and we work with a client or with a collaborator. We go through that with them. So you guys have your terrific process. I've loved collaborating with you on that. I've taught that process in my course a couple times. The UK Behavioral Insights team is just one other example, has their test approach, target and trial. Both of these obviously heavily informed by design thinking. At Penn Medicine, we have this great Center for Healthcare Innovation. They've got a nice 4-step process that incorporates kind of the double diamond, so divergent and convergent thinking, which is really helpful. All of those fantastic scaffolding and tools to take a problem through solutioning and through trialing and testing and impact. At Chibe, we've recently, because everyone's got to have their own, right? Sort of captured that in a process we're calling Nudge. of course, 5 steps, narrowing, understanding, which is sort of the contextual inquiry or the empathy, discovering or uncovering, or distilling behavioral insights, generating intervention ideas, and evaluation. I really need to write that up in a methods paper, but we've captured it in an empirical paper for some of our mental health services delivery work in Philadelphia. If you're interested in that, that paper's just out. So yes, we have these great processes, and I think there's a challenge both in academic work and in practice and consultation work in doing this work efficiently and nimbly and on a time scale where we can learn quickly. I think all of these processes, nudge and the ones that inform it, can accommodate sort of rapid cycle prototyping along the way. But what we really want is something where we can get kind of the whole idea soup to nuts in something shorter than 2 years or an R01 type study. So as we've thought about what Indlela is going to look like, which could have been maybe absent COVID, some dozens of these short bit trials, behavioral insights trials, trying to think about new ways maybe of thinking about the intervention design process or the intervention development process to accommodate rapid trials. So that's sort of the problem I want to uncover, and just want to talk through 2 case studies of projects that are not part of Indlela because we just launched in January, but were part of our kind of formative work and partnership building work with Gates funding in South Africa leading up to Indlela, that might be good sort of springboards to talk about this problem a little bit. So second frame, so Indlela, 1 frame, design problem, another frame. Okay, here's the 3rd frame, which is like the actual problem we're trying to solve, which is ending the HIV epidemic in South Africa, something that is within reach, actually. Although it's the world's largest HIV epidemic in terms of numbers, and incidence is still high, with PEPFAR funding and with huge investments in country and with the availability of ARVs, there's actually a path to ending transmission, or at least pushing transmission below epidemic levels, which is extraordinary. It's like an amazing feat. And what I've learned, HIV is fairly new for me as a clinical space to be working in, but have been really impressed in both senses of the word by how much the remaining challenge is a behavioral challenge. Not to say there are not structural or access issues or cultural issues. There's a lot there. But if we, combating the epidemic has really been framed as hitting these 90, 90, 90, or now the 95, 95, 95 fast track targets that are quite behavioral in nature. So we want 95% of people who have HIV to know their status, which is different from wanting 95% of people to test, although it's sometimes framed that way. Of people who are HIV positive and know their status, we want 95% of them to be on treatment, to be on antiretrovirals. And the last step is sort of a retention or adherence step. Among people who initiate treatment, we want 95% of them to take those medications consistently and for long enough that their viral loads are suppressed to the point where they are healthy and they are not able to transmit the virus onward. So the 95, 95, 95 targets. And again, lots of ways to think about that other than behaviorally, but you can see where the opportunities are there for behavior change innovation. And this is really the sort of the Indlela focus is around meeting these targets. So the 2 case studies that I want to talk about happen to both be about getting folks to test. We also do linkage to care and adherence work, but I'll just, for the purposes of talking today, we'll talk about that first testing step. And we're actually pretty close. Most recent data suggests that women are doing quite well. Women who are HIV positive are likely to get tested and know that status. Men is a little lower, it's 87%, and that gap doesn't sound so big. The hitch is the guys who are HIV positive and aren't testing are by definition hard to reach, and also maybe folks who are more likely to pass the virus onward. So that again, last mile problem to get that most disengaged with care, maybe most economically vulnerable, maybe most socially marginalized folks who can do a lot of viral spreading, really need them to engage in care at least enough to test. So that's the that's the big picture problem we're trying to solve. The first case study is a project we did with Wits RHI, a reproductive health unit of Wits University, that was running a very large self-testing program, the STAR program, also PEPFAR and many other agencies funding that. And the self-testing program is amazing. They just set up these tents, these sort of booths at community sites. Could be outside a mall, could be in a township at a big crossroads, in sort of central business districts. And people can just stop by, and after a pretty short spiel and a little bit of data collected, just be handed a self-test that they can take home, or they can do it in a little cabana, a little pop-up cabana on site. If they test positive on site, there's actually a nurse there to do a confirmatory test as well. And this is great because it really brings self-tests, right to where people are, really lowers the bar for getting the test. But of course, we want people to do the test, to take it home, and if they're positive, to report their results. For programmatic reasons, we actually want them to report their results to us, whether it's positive or negative, just so we can sort of track people through that testing program. So, you pick up a test, you hear from us how to do it, it's modeled for you. And then most people take it home. What this Wits RHI STAR program did was set up a WhatsApp number, actually several WhatsApp numbers, and showed people how to report their results, and emphasized the importance of reporting the results, so that if it was a positive test, STAR could help you link to care, not to a car, but to care. And that looks like telling you where the closest HIV service provider or clinic is, and making sure you can sort of get in the system and start your ARVs. So this is what just kind of the usual care, what we were trying to intervene upon, looked like. It was just one of the slips. You just got like a brown paper bag with the test in it after you've been shown how to use it. And this pamphlet told you there's a WhatsApp number, here's the number, take a picture with your phone of the barcode that's on your test and the test result. It looks like a pregnancy test. So we can see the results, send that to this WhatsApp number. There's a nurse available to either chat with you on WhatsApp or actually call you if you want and get more information. You're welcome, please do it whether it's positive or negative. If it's negative, we can counsel you about when you might want a test again. So that was great, but basically nobody was reporting in to the WhatsApp line. Low, like less than 4% over several months. Not being able to close that loop on care. Let's get to this point where like your slides won't advance. There we go. So our goal was to increase that WhatsApp reporting rate, so that we just heard back from more people. So this was one where kind of like that first picture I showed of the people sitting around the table on the whiteboard, this just seemed to sort of cry out for either a planning prompt or some kind of commitment mechanism. In our case, we decided to sort of run with both of those. And I put "just do it" in quotes. In the Innovation Center work at Penn, a lot of times ideas come up in the clinical enterprise where the Innovation Center folks are just like, we don't need to like study that or do a big project. You should just do that. Like, that's a good idea, just do it. We obviously wanted to trial this, but it just seemed like we didn't need to do a lot of formative work or uncover a lot of barriers. This just seemed like the literature and the theory would tell us those two things should help, assuming this is some kind of procrastination or salience problem, and would be very, very easy to implement, right? And again, the other important point of these behavioral trials that we want to run with Indlela is that they be super light touch, sort of nudge type scale. So this trial was called Plan and Commit. We liked plan and pledge better, but apparently the word pledge didn't resonate in country. So plan and commit. And we operationalized that with just another card that went into the brown paper bags for the folks assigned to this intervention. We did think about separating a plan intervention, a commit intervention, a combined intervention, but for rapid trial purposes and just sort of throwing everything in the kitchen sink, we put them together. So this little card had a couple of points. One was just a little short planning prompt, 3 questions about when do you plan to take the test, where you plan to test, and who you might do the test with, either by yourself or who you might do it with. And the second was just a commitment. We emphasized, the promoters, the health promoters, emphasized that this was not something you had to give back. We didn't want the answers to this. This was not a quiz. This was merely a tool in the intervention script. It just said, some people find it helpful to make a plan to sort of finish the testing process once they get home. Please use this if it's helpful for you. So we didn't ask them to fill it out in real time. We can talk about whether that would have been a good idea. It was really just like, here it is, it's in the card, here are the WhatsApp reporting instructions, here's this planning, this thing that might be helpful for you in reporting. Our study design, this is what the testing sites look like. They just throw up a tent. There are sort of planned sites that they move through in the districts where STAR is active. You can see our testing folks from Wits RHI STAR there, and folks can just stop by and you'll get kind of pulled in. Hey, would you like to test? About testing. Here's a test. A little bit of information is gathered, and you're asked if you're willing to have the program follow up with you, because they do some focused outreach for testing results as well. But the whole process can be as short as 2 or 3 minutes. If it's busy or if you have a lot of questions, it might take a little bit longer. So we powered a study that needed about 660 test distributions in each arm. So our plan and commit arm, and what we called a salience control. It wasn't quite business as usual, but it was an intervention that just emphasized the importance of reporting. In the business as usual case, the information about WhatsApp reporting is in the bag on a flyer, but there isn't really time in the sort of standard care script to go through that or really emphasize it. So in this sort of focused study with the plan and commit intervention, we wanted to compare that to something where the WhatsApp reporting availability was really brought to people's attention and the importance of doing that. We randomized at the team site day. It's probably got a little more complicated than it needed to, but the teams move around, the sites move around, and we wanted all team members to be able to deliver either intervention. So pairs of 2 promoters were assigned on a site day to do one intervention or the other. And 4 of our teams were trained to do both conditions. So each team gave out 30 tests per day. Both teams would do both interventions at each site. So one nice thing about this in terms of a rapid trial was we really only needed 11 days in the field. So quick on that point. And then we also had the programmatic data from all the other days and all the other sites and all the other teams that were just doing their usual testing distribution. So not formally in the trial or in the sample, but an availability of those data to compare to a business as usual case. Here are preliminary results. The results, we can talk about the results. I'm actually more interested in sort of the intervention design process, but just so you see kind of where we hit, and we are writing these up, so we prefer these not get shared on social media, but the bump was really from business as usual to our 2 interventions. We did not get much marginal bang for the buck on our plan and commit intervention over just the salience control, where we made it a little bit more obvious and more important to folks about WhatsApp reporting. That said, 2.5, 3x bump, well, really 2.5 on over business as usual for reporting. Didn't show these results here, but I will say we did not get a boost in positivity. So you might hope, if you think about hitting those 95, 95, 95 targets and who we're missing because we're awfully close, what we want is folks, we don't want sort of negative folks worried, well, just testing over and over again. Repeat testing is great, but the folks we're really trying to reach with STAR are folks who haven't tested ever, haven't tested in a long time, and you would hope that that would yield a high positive, which we did not see here. We actually had no positive test result reports in either the plan and commit or the salience control arm. So that's important to know as well. Some lessons learned on that. So I mentioned this a little bit before. We ended up testing plan and commit together as one intervention, although initially kind of scoped it as either plan versus commit or plan versus plan and commit. Could we disentangle sort of the marginal boost from a commit? I think that was, like, in hindsight, having seen the results, I think that was the right call. That's still a mechanism that would be neat to unpack. In terms of the rapidness here, This was very quick to design. I mean, we sort of came to the table, you know, with our cool hammer that we thought would work really well here. It really only took a few minutes to hammer that out. But just getting from an intervention idea and design to running the trial was quite a long time. That's just sort of the reality, right, of working pragmatically in an existing ongoing program. And really on our end at Penn, has just taken us a long time to analyze the data for faults that are totally our own. So it hasn't been rapid from, you know, hey, let's work with STAR on trying a plan and commit strategy to, hey, we've submitted a paper or we've, you know, presented at a conference. So need to work on that. I'm really, really happy that we scoped in the protocol and that could work with Wits to get the data for business as usual, because I think there's really, really instructive information there. So important, I think, important lesson learned. And I guess what I wish in hindsight, again, is that we'd planned up front for multiple iterations. Again, this is a pragmatic issue. STAR is running, is ongoing. You know, there's time pressures to get these tests out. You know, there's a point at which it's just not helpful for the team to have to run different trials. But it would have been really neat to get kind of a signal from those first 11 days in the field and quickly go back. For example, I would have loved to have tried a little stronger prompt to encourage people to use the planning prompt in real time. Also wish you might think that the planning prompt could encourage people to test on site with their self-test versus taking it home. And so sort of time to testing among the folks who tested, it would have been great to power it for some differences in like time to testing. I cannot see the chat, but I can see when some chat questions go in. So I can stop here if we want to chat about these for a second before we go on to the second case study, or I can keep plowing ahead. Happy to go either way on that.
Great, that's actually a great idea. We do have one question right now. Did each team sometimes do salience and sometimes P&C? And if so, do you think there may have been spillover?
Yeah, I mean, you could see from the picture that, you know, if there were two teams here, one team doing P&C in a given day and another team doing salience, that, you know, one of our participants who was getting a plan and commit spiel could have heard the salient spiel or vice versa. So yes, every site day had both a plan and commit team working and a salience control team working. It was different, you know, different teams every day, depending on how the randomization worked. And each team would put 30 tests out with their assigned intervention and then revert to business as usual. So it might take them different amounts of time, but yes, those were happening simultaneously, and I'm sure spillover was a thing.
Great. Got another question too. Have you considered testing the intervention with the plan and commit form being completed at the time the test is provided?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the big, that's the obvious next step for us. You might hypothesize a bigger bump, a bigger difference between plan and commit and the salience control, but for that to happen, I don't think it's enough to just hear that we've got this tool for you or this little helpful flyer. You know, we actually want you to kind of look at it and read it and take it in and engage with it. And so some kind of, you know, prompt or incentive or a table where you can sit down and do it, or encouragement to complete it before you leave could be helpful. We talked a lot about whether we wanted people to sort of fill it out and leave it somewhere. We even talked about having like a big board where you would post it for sort of visibility or social accountability. And people felt that the information was private enough about how you plan to test that having it just be sort of a personal thing was better. But I think we paid for that in an attenuated effect size.
Great. Does anyone else on the line have a question about this first case study before we move on to the second one?
Or comments about the design, the intervention design process? And maybe the comparative.
Oh, here we go. Do you think the hammer approach here was useful, given that there wasn't more reporting among males?
Right. I think the hammer approach, these can be so like partnership and context specific. So we were working with Wits RHI. We had a bunch of different sort of intervention ideas going. In some ways, we saw this, both parties saw this as a way to like, let's just do a study together and like see how that partnership works. And so having kind of a, hey, this is probably ready to go. This is, you know, very theoretically motivated and it would be easy to implement, and let's just do it. For that reason, I think it was extraordinarily helpful. We learned a lot about working with each other. It would lay the ground, it has laid the groundwork for a lot of other trials we want to try. But what we didn't do was find out like what's actually keeping people from reporting. You know, we sort of hypothesized that, oh, you know, those are hot cold state, or like they're motivated when they pick up the test, but then they go home and they forget, or it's scary, or they don't want to know the information, or they don't have any privacy, or whatever. There are a lot of other things that might be getting in the way from that test, from completing the test and then reporting your results to us, that have nothing to do, that a plan and commit intervention isn't going to address. So I think that was the cost, right? Sort of failing to learn about those barriers.
For sure. And let's see, while we're waiting for any last questions, just a good comment that this hammer metaphor is brilliant.
Oh, not mine. I mean, I added the cinnamon buns, but yeah.
I think that was a good touch. Got another one here. You mentioned there were no positive results reported in either experimental condition. Were there any in the business as usual? And if so, do you think that this was coincidental or influenced by the designs?
Yeah, I mean, these are small numbers. So the business as usual numbers aren't so small because that's like for our whole 11 days in the field, which was more than, you know, there was about a 3-week window when those 11 days were accrued. We have hundreds in the plan and commit and standards control. We have thousands of test distributions in the business as usual. So the 3.3% is way more reports than our 2 intervention arms. And the positivity was sort of what, for our window, it was also business as usual. It was about what they see. And yeah, so what we might have done with our bump is just encouraged reporting of people who get a negative result. I mean, that's clearly what we did. So I think we have to think more about what we really want here is to link positive folks to care. So what is the intervention at the point of test distribution that is most going to move the needle on positive folks being like, oh, got a positive test. What am I supposed to do next? What can the STAR program or Wits, what did they tell me about what I was supposed to do if I got a positive test? And how have we lowered sort of emotional and logistical barriers so that that's something they want to do? Because this is great. I mean, these are nice. This is a nice bump, but this is not going to get us to the 95, 95, 95 targets. All right, good. We done with that one?
I think so.
All right. I'm watching the clock. Are we done at 1, by the way, also?
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on then, because the other one, the intervention design process is a little longer. All right, so this was another sort of partnership development project that we did along the way towards getting Indlela set up. And it was with the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation, which is based in Cape Town. And in some ways, you could think of this as showing up with a hammer, in that there was a lot of interest on both sides in thinking about the U equals U message. So the undetectable equals untransmissible message, which has been tested around the world as hopefully a motivator for people to test, right? This kind of, you know, this new good news that our medication is so great that, and you know, so powerful that if you take it and we get your viral load down to a low enough point, you can no longer transmit the virus to someone else. You know, supposed to be very kind of positive, upbeat message. Hasn't yet been tested as much in South Africa, and again, especially targeting sort of harder to reach, maybe less linked to care in general, men, maybe socially marginalized men. So that said, lots of questions about how to bake that into an intervention. And U equals U can be used across the treatment cascade. You know, testing is sort of the first step, so we wanted to test it there, but you could also imagine it actually even being more powerful, you know, at the point of a positive test to link to care and to adhere. So our context for this, the Desmond Tutu HIV Foundation has these tutu testers, which are vans. The ones shown here are actually smaller than their kind of default van, but they're these like mobile vans that can drive around, and you can actually go on to the van to like an RV to test. They have like testing suites, they have nurses there and testers. And again, if you end up with a positive test, all the steps in place to link you to care. And the Tutu tester drives around to different locations. Sometimes it's sort of a teen-focused initiative. Sometimes it's a male-focused initiative. Sometimes it's just open to everybody. But like, you know, like our STAR testing in Johannesburg and Pretoria, lots of it are just folks who like, yeah, great, like, sure, I'll do an HIV test today. You know, likely not positive, or likely already know their status, might be repeat testers. It hasn't so much scooped up, again, this harder to reach group. So similar goal to the STAR study, but with the idea that we could leverage the U equals U message as a way to just increase the motivation and the positivity among hard to reach men. So this process was really different in that we engaged with a human-centered design firm, Matchboxology. Super cool guys, wonderful group to work with. We had worked with them on a couple of other projects for a process that looks here very intensive, which it is, but was able to unfold pretty rapidly. I would say that any delays we had from deciding to do this to doing it were like the pen, invoicing problems with, getting money to outside the US, which we're still working on. That process needs to be redesigned. But, Matchboxology does, they have their 5-step thing: evidence, empathy, Eureka, execution, and evolution. We had seen some of their work with PSI and some other folks previously, and knew that they were really, really good at listening, empathizing, doing that discovery process with end users, with stakeholders, to elicit insights that I think are complementary to the behavioral toolkit. I think they're much more emotional, affective, cultural. I think it's actually a really neat complementary approach to our usual, like, what biases are going on here? How is this hard? So they did a series of workshops with 50 men from Guguletu, which is one of the townships outside Cape Town. I'm drastically streamlining the reporting of this. We have incredibly rich data from these series of workshops that both sort of generated insights and then used those with the men, again, to co-create some intervention ideas. But let me just sort of highlight some of the things we learned. So one was that, there are new ARV regimens that are different from people's mental models of what sort of you used to do. They're packaged very nicely. There's just one pill, it's daily. And that could be sort of like, hey, this is the modern hip thing to do, that like taking your ARVs, taking the modern ARVs, the new ARVs, is pretty cool. And like there's the snappy guy in the suit, and you can be like him. A second insight was that a lot of men, and they're very familiar with HIV, many of them are HIV positive, or certainly know people who are, they really think of the ARVs as the bad guy. It's the medicines, it's kind of like masking here, right? And the ability to frame the virus as the enemy and the bad guy that the pills are going to conquer was a real opportunity. And why are ARVs the enemy? In part because, you're told that you can't drink when you're on ARVs, and that's not so much about alcohol interacting with the medicine as sort of the behavioral impacts of drinking. The assumption is men will forget their pill regimens when they're drinking, and so you're advised not to drink, and like, that's not fun. And that frame shift could be really useful. And then, of course, I mean, this is not novel for any of us in the behavioral space, but the more kind of simple and visual a message could be, the easier it would be to kind of hear and follow. They also really unpacked like U equals U. So that sounds super cool. It sounds super cool in English. Because it happens to work with undetectable as untransmissible. Translating it into local languages, both linguistically and conceptually, was a bigger challenge, and one Matchboxology really wanted to help us tackle. And where they came down for us with this on the insights was that the first U is all about like, where's the virus? This sort of this idea of undetectable. It just means like, we can't see it. And that's like, we can never see it, but we can't see it in your blood. And they did a lot of neat we weren't able to bake these into the intervention, but they did a lot of things with colored beads, white beads and red beads in jars, both to communicate like, you know, here's the virus in your blood, but also like, here's HIV prevalence in your community, and like, how could your behaviors like shift the number of beads and sort of make it go away. And then the second U, this idea of untransmissible, it's like, you can't give it to me, meaning your current or potential sexual partner. But there's something really kind of like sexy and secret and fun about, you know, I'm doing this cool thing, taking this cool pill, and one of the things it means is that you're safe with me, that I'm a safe guy. And obviously men very concerned about kind of loss of sexuality, loss of sexual life when they're HIV positive, and that's maybe one motivation not to test. So like, how do you capture this idea of like, what does it mean to be untransmissible? They also did a series of sort of how might we questions with the guys. One was, you know, what might you say to me to make me confident that I'll be safe? Like how does the safety aspect, the undetectable part, how do I hear that best? How can you make me curious about the pill? What spiel, either a script delivered in a face-to-face encounter or a video or a billboard, might get me kind of like, yeah, I want to hear more. How do we make this a community thing, right? So stigma, people definitely worried about stigma, don't want to test positive, don't want to tell people that they are positive. Is there a way to diminish that and make our prevention behaviors and our prevention as treatment behaviors pro-community and really positive in the community, which was exciting. And then asking the guys like, hey, you're consumers, you buy things, you have brands that you love. What would your favorite brand do to pitch the pill to you? So, you know, that kind of marketing approach also, I think, a really nice complement to some of the behavioral work we do. I could go on for like another hour about the process from the Eureka workshops and what Matchboxology delivered to us to our intervention. And I think the short version there is Matchboxology delivered way more really potentially exciting stuff than we could bake into like a 30-second script. And what we wanted for this intervention, I think the potential is there for more intensive interventions. We wanted a very scalable, quick, light touch thing that a guy could say to another guy near the 2-2 tester to get them to go test. So our constraint was like a 35-second spiel. We tried the thing with the glass beads and it was just like too hard to kind of hold them and too hard to get people like passersby attention to sort of talk through it, but it's something we want to explore. But this was the script that we came down to, and think back to this slide, you can kind of hear the answers to some of these how might we questions baked into this script. So I'll read it quickly. The goal was to have it be about 35 seconds. It's longer in COSA. But so hi, my name's Allison. I work for Desmond Tutu Center. Do you know Impilo? So almost like introducing them to Impilo, and Impilo is a funny kind of pun. So it means health, but it also means pill, and it's sort of how people refer to, you know, like we say, like taking the pill for contraceptive, just Impilo is like your ARVs. So do you know Impilo? Impilo is the latest Mahala-free ARV pill that you take once a day if you're infected with HIV. So kind of introducing the idea that like Impilo is this sort of character, emphasizing that it's free, emphasizing once a day. Did you know that Impilo protects you from getting sick because it reduces HIV in the body so much so that you can't infect your partner and family? This is called U equals U. So instead of just saying U equals U, explaining what we meant, like what is the underlying concept, but also giving it the U equals U tag. It protects you even if you don't use a condom, even if you're drinking. Did you know that? So in no time, you're grand, strong, or courageous, which was a really highly valued characteristic we heard from the men. By protecting your partner and family, your life stays the same and doesn't change. And that's kind of that fear of loss that might keep people from testing. And here's the community part. You and I can show our Kasi how to do this thing. I can't remember exactly how this goes, but do this thing by protecting our Kasi. So there was a little tagline, Kusela ikasi lam, protecting our community. So, you know, you're a big guy and you're also like a community guy by taking these pills. 2-2 tester right over there. They can quickly tell your HIV status and get you Impilo for Mahala. Take this invitation with you. I'll show you the cards. See you there. So pretty fast, we hired these fantastic sort of community engagement actors, sort of trained them up in delivering this with fidelity. They brought their own enthusiasm and community knowledge, which was fantastic. Really, really fun intervention. So this was literally just passersby. We told them to target men between the observed ages of X and Y. Site day, again, randomization. Both guys could deliver both spiels. The control spiel was just, hey, the 2-2 tester's over there. It's a really good idea to get an HIV test. Take this card over there and you can get tested. So much shorter. So again, we have sort of differences in intensity in our interventions. The blue and the green versus the red and the yellow were just so we could tell which of our 2 guys had given out the invitation. But the card also has U equals U, in Pilo, reduces HIV so you don't pass it on, and gets that Kuseli Salam message on there too. And then we have some information about when they received the card. So that's how we know that they got the invitation from one of our guys and carried it over to the 2-2 tester to get tested. The outcome, I'll tell you the outcome we were interested in. It was just the number who got a card that tested. We powered this. We really wanted to be able to see actually a pretty small difference in reporting. So we were going to do 4,000 men. It was going to be 40 to 48 days, randomized at 6 different sites. It only takes about an hour or an hour and a half to get 100 cards handed out in these areas. So that may sound like a lot, but the guys are pretty good at getting those cards handed out quickly. And it was going to be 24. You can already hear that I'm talking about this like it didn't happen the way we thought. It was going to be 24 standard message days and 24 U equals U days. And what happened was COVID. So study approved, study launched, and 12 days after we were in the field, the UCT shut down studies. However, so we said, okay, the study shut down, maybe it's paused, maybe we should just wait and see if it's going to reopen. And then it just didn't seem like it was ever going to reopen or anytime soon. So we decided just to say the trial had been closed and analyze the data that we had. And here are the results. So 22% in the U equals U arm versus 13% in the standard message arm who received a card came and tested. A few more than that in both arms showed up at the 2-2 tester. Sometimes if there was a wait, they didn't stick around. We sort of got their card, but then they didn't stay around to register and get tested. But this is the percent who actually tested. And here we actually did see a difference in positivity as well. I wrote this down so I could tell you it. It is like 6.4%. It's higher in U equals U. 6.4% versus 3.9, I think. So that's exciting. These are 6.2 versus 4.4. So higher positivity as well as higher testing rates. And we will be able to actually see through the national system whether they linked to care. So we'll actually be able to tell their like 1 month and 3 month ARV linkage too. We have got a lot of data on these guys, and there's a lot of interesting results that we'll be talking through in the manuscript underway. One of them is we asked some, just awareness of the U equals U message and some just knowledge of some basic HIV facts. Those were actually no different between our 2 groups once they showed up at the tester. If anything, a little bit better. More awareness of the U equals U message, better knowledge of HIV facts in our standard of care group, our standard message group. My hunch there, which we can't analyze with these data, is that the U equals U message just sort of prompted testing, maybe not through a very cognitive mechanism of like hearing and understanding the U equals U message. And I think among the standard of care group, if you got an invite and you showed up, your motivation and awareness and knowledge was probably pretty high already. So I think we had like a lot of selection operating with the standard of care group that didn't operate with U equals U, which is interesting. There's something about that message, either just it's fun delivery and that you spend 45 seconds talking to our guys that got you there regardless, like independent of selection effects. So that's cool. Obviously, with more time and more power, we want to find out whether it was just the duration and intensity and attention of our U equals U intervention versus just the content. So an attention control there would be great. But again, coming back to the design question, I loved this process. I've done a little bit of sort of user experience stuff, not a full-blown sort of start to finish human-centered design process. I do think it's very complementary to the behavioral work we do. It was very feasible and pretty speedy. It just left us with still another intervention design step because we got so much rich. I mean, we could have made an hour-long video about U equals U with incredible like quotes and, could have, made up a really cool thing with the beads. It's just, we were going for something much lighter touch. So I think there's another like hiccup there with design. Now our challenge, given these pretty promising results with only a quarter of our sample, we obviously want to keep going, whether that's with Gates funding or NIH funding, not sure. But we've got to do something that's COVID proof because we're not going to be face-to-face recruiting guys in Google too and otherwhere in Cape Town anytime soon. So trying to figure out whether like videoing our guys doing the spiel and getting that out by WhatsApp video, other ways of continuing this work in the COVID context, which is a huge challenge for all of us. As always, the clock is like zooming along. So I hope I've left enough time for some more questions and discussion. Happy to answer any questions about the U equals U trial and or have some discussion about design challenges in general.
Absolutely. We've got a question in on the U equals U trial. And then we do have one more from the previous case study that came in, but we'll start with the current one.
Okay.
I would have, so this starts with a little bit of commentary. I would have a slight fear that men might adopt or internalize U equals U, but still not take their ARVs every day. And thus the message might actually lead to increased transmission rates if, for example, men have more risky sex because they think they can't transmit. Did you consider this or gain any insights into this from the HCD insights? And if so, what did you do next?
That's a really good question. I guess our take was, if you're not even linked to care, if you're not even initiating treatment, there's no way we're going to get your viral load down. If the U equals U message at least gets you tested, maybe linked, maybe at least the pills are around, that's another starting place to work on adherence. The behaviors are already pretty risky. I don't love that frame, but there's not a lot like more risky behavior to be taken up here. But I think messaging around the importance of viral load testing and how we give people information, how we give people feedback. Again, maybe the beads are helpful. Like that's part of care already, and a lot of people don't do it. But I think that's probably the answer, is making sure as U equals U messaging is promulgated, that the importance and salience and how we communicate people's viral load results to them becomes even more important. That was a total hedge, but it's a really good point.
Okay, give everyone a few seconds to think of any questions they want to drop in here about the second trial before we just switch really awkwardly back to the first trial.
That's okay, that's all right. The risk of doing 2 case studies.
Okay, what led the design firms to try the beads exercise?
The questions, and we have all the video from the workshops, which is just so great. Partly this idea of like, I don't want to just hear this, I need to like see something, and trying to link the idea of there's both the idea of like the virus is circulating in your blood and how do we show that, but also how do we get the idea of like community viral load, because one of the reasons we want people on ARVs, and one of the arguments for like ARVs for all or ARVs for all in a high risk population is if the community viral load drops, transmission can drop. And how would we show that? How would you explain community viral load to someone? And it just seemed like, beads in a jar. I think they experimented with some other different things, but like seeing, in this jar, there's lots of red beads and only a few whites. And in this one, there's just a couple of red ones. That both tells us that your viral load is low, and hey, community viral load is low, and you've been part of making that happen. So it just seemed like a really good visual. I wish I should have put pictures of those. We have actually a video of the guy pitching us that idea in the first reveal session. It's really good.
Great. Okay, so we do have the question from the first case study, but I think this actually applies to both. How do you think the initial partnership / available channel influence the potential for any design, especially if there might be some type of selection bias in who is using this service?
Yeah. I think the channel is important, and I think it's probably equally important. I think sort of partnership factors were as important. So you know, we're working with Wits RHI. The available channel, the available program to work on was STAR. So like that put some bounds around it, but the ability in neither project would I say, did we solve like the most important problem, right? Or the biggest barrier. We did, if we were going after like, we want to hit 95, 95, 95, both of these projects, you could argue, are a bit on the margin of that. And that's a function of like the channels that were available. If you think of the 2.2 tester as a channel, or STAR testing as a channel. And I think intervention designs in both of those cases were partly like hammer problems or hammer opportunities, and partly like what's a good thing for us to work on together. And that doesn't really answer the selection bias part of the question. But yeah, I mean, we, in both pilots, in both trials, we know that we got a lot of repeat testers and a lot, you know, didn't necessarily get the hardest to reach folks, even though that's what we were going for. I don't know if I answered that question at all, but.
All right, so we've got a couple of minutes left here before we get to the hour. So, you know, any attendees speak now or forever hold your peace. Just kidding. If you have any lingering questions that come to mind afterwards, you can, of course, reach out to us at academy@ideas42, or reach out directly to Allison at butt@upenn.edu, which is on the screen in front of you.
Yeah, but that's me. Yeah, I would be delighted to hear from folks. If people are working in South Africa and are interested in hearing more about Indlela or partnering with us, definitely want to hear about that. Yeah, really, really grateful for people showing up today and helping me think through this. Very grateful.
Well, we've got time for one final question, and we've got a final question. Is there behavioral science research on the affect or mental model type issues the design firm explored?
I mean, yeah, where does behavioral science end and like this sort of human-centered design stuff start? Brendan Mon-Brown, who I highlighted at the beginning, who's a professor at UCT, has a really interesting study right now, also kind of U equals U focused, but really trying to shift not just the cognition, but the affect at the time that that you receive a positive diagnosis as a mechanism to promote linkage. And he's doing it video-based, but you know, his grant is a really nice blending of sort of affect and psychology and mental models with sort of how those become behavioral barriers. So I think there's enormous synergy. You know, we do tend to work in silos, although behavioral science is better about that than some other fields. But yeah, I mean, his citations for that grant come more from psychology, which is behavioral science. But I think it's an intersection, it's a rock face that we really need to work at, because there's enormous potential there for, you know, getting beyond like affect heuristic and hot cold empathy gap. There's a lot more there to dig into.
Great. Thank you, Allison, so much for, spending this hour with us and sharing kind of a look behind the curtain, as it were, into some of your work, sharing it with both the Ideas 42 team and all of our guests who've joined us externally. And thank you to the participants who similarly have spent an hour with us remotely. And, hopefully in the future we can return to doing something, live in DC or New York, but I appreciate everyone's, gracious flexibility in dealing with a remote setup. But we've reached the end of the hour here. Like I said, if you have any lingering questions, please don't hesitate to reach out directly to Allison. We will be, I believe, sharing a recording of this session with everyone via email over the next few days. And if you have any other specific questions about Ideas 42 Academy seminar series or other events, please reach out to us directly at academy@ideas42.org. You can view our upcoming schedule of events. We have a crash course in behavioral science that's going to be filling up later on in the summer at ideas42.org/academy. With that, I will close this session and thank you again.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Stay sane.